Welcome to the Par Days channel. Today, we explain Numbers chapter 23 in a clear and simple way, step by step. This is absolutely one of the most incredible narratives we have. It is just packed full of tension, and it contains some of the most profound statements about the nature of God's promises that you're ever going to find. So let's just jump right into it.
Okay, here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll set the context between Balak and Balaam. Second, we'll look at attempt 1 and the first oracle. Third, we'll cover attempt 2 and the second oracle. Fourth, attempt 3 at Mount Peor. Fifth, we'll break down the explanations and key ideas. And finally, we'll wrap it up with some practical life lessons and a quick recap.
All right, section 1, context. Balak and Balaam. Let's set the stage.
Right at the very beginning of the chapter, we walk straight into this incredible tension. We have King Balak of Moab, and he is absolutely desperate for a curse against the incoming Israelites. But Balaam, the diviner he actually hired to do the job, is totally constrained. It's a massive clash of goals, right? Balak wants to manipulate the spiritual realm to destroy his enemies, but Balaam has this very strict limitation. He cannot simply speak his own words. He literally has to wait and see exactly what God reveals to him.
So what do? Well, in verses 1 through 6, we see this massive, elaborate human effort. Balaam tells the king to build 7 altars and then to sacrifice 7 bulls and 7 rams. Now, in the ancient Near Eastern world, the number 7 was a huge deal. It represented completeness or ultimate spiritual power. So this is an incredibly expensive, highly ritualistic undertaking. Balak is pulling out all the stops. After this is set up, Balaam actually leaves Balak standing by the offerings. He goes aside to a barren height, hoping God will meet him. And the text plainly tells us that God did meet him and put a very specific message in his mouth to take back to the king and the Moabite princes who were waiting back by the altars.
Moving right along to section 2, attempt 1, and the first oracle. Let's see what happens.
Okay, so moving to verse 7, the stage is set. The smoke is rising from the altars, and Balak is eagerly waiting for this devastating curse. But right out of the gate, Balaam admits absolute defeat. In verses 7 and 8, he starts his oracle by stating exactly why he was brought all the way from the eastern mountains. He was brought to denounce Israel. But then he asks this deeply profound, almost rhetorical question. How can I curse those whom God has not cursed? I mean, it's just pure logic. He publicly declares that he cannot spiritually or logically condemn a people that the Creator himself has not condemned. Human words simply hold zero power against divine favor.
And then it actually gets worse for Balak. In verses 9 and 10, instead of cursing them, Balaam actually blesses Israel's uniqueness. He's looking down from these rocky peaks, and he describes a people who live apart and do not consider themselves one of the nations. They are completely distinct. Then he just marvels at their sheer size, asking, who can count the dust of Jacob or number the 4th part of Israel? Now, if you know the history, this directly recalls God's ancient promise to Abraham, that he would make his descendants as numerous as the dust of the earth. Finally, Balaam wraps up his first oracle by wishing that his own end could be as righteous as theirs. He's expressing a sincere, deep desire to actually share in the destiny of the very people he was hired to destroy.
Well, you can imagine how that went over. The immediate clash in verses 11 and 12 is just intense. Balak is fuming. His extreme frustration meets Balaam's helpless obedience. Think about it. Balak just spent incredible resources on these 7 altars and all those expensive sacrifices, only to stand there and listen to his hired spiritual contractor basically sing the praises of his worst enemies. Balak demands to know, "What have you done to me?" But Balaam doesn't budge. He simply replies that he is entirely on his own. So, what's a desperate king to do? That brings us to section 3, attempt 2, and the second oracle. Balak thinks, okay, maybe it's the location. He thinks a change of scenery might somehow change God's mind. So in verses 13 through 17, Balak drags Balaam to a new spot, the field of Zophim, which in Hebrew actually means the field of watchers, up on Mount Pisgah. Balak explicitly hopes that by looking at a different angle, where they only see a smaller, less intimidating fraction of the Israelites, well, maybe cursing them will be a little easier. So they get to the top, and what do? They repeat the exact same ritual. 7 altars, 7 bulls, 7 rams. Balaam once again leaves Balak standing by the sacrifices to go meet with God, and once again God gives him the message.
And while this next moment literally captures the core theology of the entire chapter, Balaam comes back to Balak and the princes, tells Balak to stand up and listen, and he plainly states that God is absolutely immutable and eternally truthful. God is not a man that he should lie. God doesn't arbitrarily change his mind just because someone built more altars or walked to a different mountain peak. If God speaks a promise, he is going to fulfill it. This statement completely shatters Balak's entire pagan strategy of trying to somehow bribe or manipulate the divine. Then, moving into verses 20 through 23, Balaam explains that because God's presence is actively living among the Israelites, no amount of dark magic or sorcery from Balak can possibly harm them. Balaam says, "Look, I have received a command to bless. He has blessed, and I cannot change it." He looks out at Israel and declares that no misfortune or misery is observed in them. He reminds Balak that God brought them out of Egypt with the strength of a wild ox. And then he makes this definitive statement: there is no sorcery against Jacob, no divination against Israel. It's essentially saying, Balak, your rituals are entirely useless against God's people. And to finish off this second oracle in verse 24, Balaam describes the Israelites using this incredibly powerful, victorious imagery. He says they rouse themselves like a lioness, like a lion that does not rest until it consumes its prey. Now, this is the exact opposite of what Balak wanted to hear, right? Balak wanted them portrayed as weak, vulnerable, and defeated. Instead, Balaam is painting a picture of an unstoppable, majestic force of nature that is completely secure and victorious under God's protection. At this point, Balak is just panicking. In verses 25 and 26, the king literally begs Balaam to just stop talking completely. He says, neither curse them at all, nor bless them at all. It's like, if you can't curse them, please at least stop pronouncing these incredibly powerful blessings over them. But Balaam? He just calmly repeats his unwavering rule of obedience. Did I not tell you I must do whatever the Lord says? The consistency here is the whole point. Balaam is locked in. He can only deliver the exact message God provides.
All right, moving to section 4, attempt 3 at Mount Peor.
Balak just cannot accept defeat, so he sets up a third and final attempt. In verses 27 and 28, he shifts the whole operation again, this time to the top of Mount Peor. Now, the name Peor is associated with an opening or a gap, and here it forms this peak that opens up and peers out over the desolate wasteland. Balak says to Balaam, "Come, let me take you to another place. Perhaps it will please God to let you curse them for me from there." Notice that stubborn little word there, perhaps. Balak is really grasping at straws now, stubbornly hoping that just maybe a new landscape will somehow unlock this elusive curse. And so verses 29 and 30 end the chapter with the exact same repetitive ritual of altars and animals. This sets the physical stage for the events that are going to spill over into chapter 24. For the third time, Balaam demands 7 altars. For the third time, Balak builds them. And for the third time, 7 bulls and 7 rams are sacrificed. The sheer repetition here really emphasizes the utter futility of human effort trying to combat a divine decree. It's like they're stuck in a loop, performing the exact same physical actions, falsely expecting a different spiritual result.
Okay, section 5, explanations and key ideas. Let's really break down what we just saw.
Now that we've walked step by step through the verses of the entire chapter, let's look at the simple, clear meaning of the text, what is known in the Hebrew tradition as the Peshat. The central underlying meaning here is the total futility of trying to mechanically manipulate God. Balak's entire strategy relies on a flawed pagan understanding. The idea that if you just offer enough blood, or if you just find the right angle on a mountain, you can force a deity to do what you want. But God's reality completely rejects this. His promises are unbreakable, and you simply cannot force him to curse those he has already chosen to bless.
So the text clearly teaches us several very powerful concepts. First off, God's word is completely reliable. As Balaam said, he is not a man that he should lie. Second, God does not require human permission or human rituals to bless his people. Third, the ultimate shield against any external hostility or sorcery is simply God's presence among his people. As Balaam noted, the Lord their God is with them. And finally, a true messenger of God is entirely bound to God's message. They cannot edit, alter, or reverse what God has declared, no matter how much they are paid.
Which brings us to our final section, section 6, life lessons and a recap. So how do we take a story about ancient kings and stone altars and actually apply it to ourselves right now?
Well, just as Balak couldn't force a curse onto Israel, we can rest securely knowing no external negativity can override God's settled blessings for us. First, simply trust in God's unbreakable promises. If He said it, He is absolutely going to do it. Second, we really need to stop trying to manipulate outcomes or force doors open that God has clearly settled. And third, if you are walking in God's presence, you do not need to fear the negativity of others. Their words and their actions simply cannot overrule God's favor on your life.
I want to leave you with this question, and just let it sink in for a moment. If God cannot lie, and if He cannot change His mind about caring for you, why should we let fear dictate our daily lives? So much of our anxiety comes from uncertainty. We wonder if things will work out, or we fear that outside forces are going to ruin our plans. But if we truly believe what Numbers chapter 23 teaches us, that God is actively with His people, that He protects them, and that His blessings cannot be reversed by human plotting, that we can face our daily anxieties with a profound, unshakable peace. Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.